so today I'm here to talk to you about the book that I read called There Are No Accidents, Synchronicity in the Stories of Our Lives by Robert H. Hoppe. So I chose this book because there have been many events in my life that have occurred that have totally changed my viewpoint on something totally, have affected another point in my life, or have just been too categorically different to explain by a pure chance event. The stories of, building catching on fire and all the members that were supposed to be there showing up late and therefore not getting hurt have been very interesting to me as to how something like this can just happen in everyday life. So the author of this book explains this by the term synchronicity, which he defines as a meaningful sequence of acasual accidental events. Now, I'm the type of person that's always one to explain something that happens in my life by a sort of concrete explanation, but this book really opened up my eyes to see that these events in our lives do play a significant reason, and that the timing can also play a huge part. So within this book, there's multiple different stories that I read, and I'll be sharing some of them with you throughout this video, the ones that really stuck out to me the most, but depending on the person, there might be some stories that don't really affect you, but the other ones you're like, wow, that's crazy. So I would definitely recommend this book for you to read. Within the stories, some of them you'll notice right away, like, oh, it's an aha moment, like, wow, like, that's crazy, or others will affect you at the end. You're like, oh, like, now I see why that happened, which I found is pretty cool. So before I dive into the different chapters, I wanted to explain the 4 features of a synchronistic event so you guys can kind of get a concrete base before I dive in. So the author states that a synchronistic event has 4 different features. The first being that the events are always acasual, so it doesn't mean it follows a cause and effect sequence. The second being that the events always occur with an emotional experience. The events are always symbolic in nature, and that these events also usually occur at a transition point in our lives. So the first chapter of the book really dives into coincidences, synchronicity, accidents, and explains the difference between them. The second chapter of the book talks about synchronicity in the story and the effect it plays in our love lives. And then the third chapter dives into our job and career lives, while the fourth chapter talks about synchronicity and the role it plays in our dreams. And then the fifth chapter talks about our spiritual life, while the sixth chapter talks about birth and death. With just explaining the 4 features of a synchronistic event to you guys, I wanted to dive into the second chapter of the book, which is about synchronicity and love and how this affects our lives. So this book first talks about how if synchronicity does play a role within your love life, it is going to occur in one or two different ways. So the first way is it's going to confirm and consolidate the relationship that you are currently in that you might have had previous doubts about. Or 2, it's going to contradict the relationship that you are in, where it will help you to figure out things about yourself or help you to figure out things about the relationship that might help you to decide to pursue a different path. The book makes a good point that stuck out to me in saying that the person that you are initially attracted to might not be the best person for you to help you actually grow as a person. It says that the qualities that initially attract you to a person actually might drive you crazy in the long run. And on the contrary, the things that cause a lot of disruption and fights in a relationship, when worked with and when appreciated, can actually be the source of a lot of emotional growth. The book also dives into the fact of a relationship and the time. So I'm sure you guys have all heard the story of someone either talking to someone or dating someone, and they break up because someone was like, you know, you're the right guy or girl, but it's just not the right time. Well, this book really talks about that a lot and saying that your individual can have all the laundry list characteristics that you are looking for in a person, but if the time is not right, then it cannot be a successful and transformative relationship. So while I just covered how synchronistic events can happen in our love lives, the next chapter of this book talked about how these same synchronistic events can happen within our job and our career lives. This chapter talked about many examples of where there was an individual who was set on one direction professionally, but then decided to pursue a new job or a whole career entirely after a synchronistic event happened. So there's one specific story that stood out to me by a woman named Gail, who was pursuing a doctorate in academics at a very prestigious and very expensive university. She considered herself in a career crisis because she was paying a lot of money for this university and she was having a lot of issues with her dissertation that she believed was due to the personalities of those in charge above her. One day she went to a coffee shop while she was working on stuff for her doctorate classes, and she ran into an old classmate who just came and sat down to her and started talking about how she pursued a degree in psychotherapy and how she loved it. While Gail was so frustrated with everything going on, she really didn't want to listen to this past classmate of hers that was in her master's program, but she did and took a lot of insight from this. She went home that night and really thought about, wow, I do have a lot of these classes from my prior master's program that could help me get into this program and get it done in a timely manner. She did take this idea and went with it and actually enrolled in the psychotherapy program and ended up loving it, and said that she actually got to teach a lot more in this program than she would if she stayed in the academic program. And she also said that if she wouldn't have ran into her old classmate and this wouldn't have been a synchronistic event, then she has no idea where she would be right now. The fourth chapter of this book really dove into synchronicity and how it affects our dreams. So this chapter took a different perspective than the prior chapters I've been talking about by taking an inside-out perspective rather than an outside-in perspective. So in the previous chapters, I've been talking about how an outside event affects us internally, but these chapters are going to be talking about how an internal event such as a dream is going to coincide with an external event. So in this chapter, there are multiple stories in which an individual has a dream and it's going to mirror an external event that happens within their life. So this book makes a good point in stating that sometimes when we are asleep, we are more awake than we are when we are doing day-to-day tasks. And it also states that when we are sleeping, a part of us is awake, and that is depicted within our dreams. It also covers the term extrasensory dreams, which basically means that the information that is provided to us in the dreams is what is real in real life, and that couldn't be determined by just regular sensory means. So there's one specific story within this chapter that I wanted to share with you guys, and it's a story of an individual who was adopted. So at the age of 27, he started having all of these dreams about his original birth mother, such as his ethnicity, his past, her name. And a couple of weird things about this story is that he started having these dreams when he was 27 years old, and that was the exact age that his birth mother decided to give up on him. He also kept dreaming that his original birth mother's name was Gladys, and this is actually the exact name of his adopted mother. So you could see how he could easily dismiss this and be like, oh, well, that's my adopted mother's name, so there's no way that that's my actual birth mother's name. Well, he kept having these dreams for a year and a half, and his friends kept telling him that they were meaningful and he needed to figure it out. Well, he kept dismissing it, but the dreams still continued. So eventually he was like, all right, I'm going to get in contact with a social worker and see if I can find out any information about my real birth mother. So he called up the social worker, and the social worker said that she couldn't disclose any of the information because there was no consent on file. Well, eventually he got frustrated and annoyed with this and was eventually like, okay, well, I've been having dreams and that my original birth mother's name is Gladys. And you could see how the social worker would be stunned by this and was like, oh, wow, like, you're right. So right then and there, he knew that that was his original birth mother's name. And the social worker ended up giving him information about his original birth mother and told him that if anyone were to ask, that he would just say that it came to him in a dream. So you can see from this event how this led the individual back to his original birth mother, and he established a great relationship with her. This example also shows a very symbolic value too, in that his original birth mother's name was Gladys, as well as his adopted birth mother's name was Gladys. So the last 2 chapters of this book talk about spirituality and life and death and how synchronicity can play a role within these. I know earlier within this video I talked about how synchronicity usually occurs during transition points in our lives. Well, this chapter talks about synchronistic events that occur with one of the most monumentous and transitional points within our lives, life and death. So I know if any of you have lost a loved one in your life, that you know that the connection you had with them doesn't end right at death, and that synchronistic events can help play a part in these. So one story that was honestly one that stuck out to me the most in this entire book, I wanted to share with you guys for one last story from this book. And it was a story of a woman named Charlotte who had a college son named Todd. Now, he went out for New Year's Eve to celebrate and unfortunately got hit by a drunk driver. Due to the physical impairments and the grief that Todd sustained, his mother, Charlotte, felt that she didn't feel comfortable having an open casket funeral and that she wanted a closed casket for herself. Well, they went along with this, and her husband fully supported her in this and felt like that was totally what was best for her at the time. Well, after the funeral, Charlotte felt that something was just unfinished, that she should have had an open casket so she could see her son one last time, and she was really struggling with this immensely. Even though her husband was there for her and told her that she made the right decision, that she would most likely be in a worse state than she would right now if she would have had an open casket, Charlotte just still didn't feel right about the situation. She spent multiple hours in her living room looking at old photo albums of past holidays, pictures of her and Todd, and just really dwelling on it, just repeating, I just wish I could see him one last time, have one more reminder of him, something. Well, one day she was sitting in her living room and the mailman came and she actually got a vanilla envelope from Todd. Now, this vanilla envelope was sent the day actually before he died. And it was a collection of pictures from their last Christmas together as kind of a Christmas/New Year's gift for his mom and his dad. Well, Todd had actually put the wrong postage stamp on it, so it was returned, delivered back to the post office, went back and forth between multiple places before it finally arrived at Charlotte's house. So, I just really thought about this story for a while and thought, something like that just doesn't happen just out of pure chance when someone's struggling so hard with something like this. And it just really made me think that this really needed to happen for Charlotte at this point in her life, because the author even stated that since that event happened, she has one more reminder from Todd that she was doing a lot better with the whole situation, even though it's still going to be very, very difficult with losing a child, that she got that one last reminder of him, and she knew that her son Todd was still with her and that he was looking over her from heaven. Alright guys, so I know I just shared a bunch of synchronistic stories from the book with you, but I do want to share one of my own. And in addition, I know that we have a discussion board for all of our book reviews, and if you guys want to comment on mine and share your own synchronistic event that has happened in your life, feel free, because I find these events super interesting, and I would think it would be super cool to hear about the events that have happened within your life. So a significant synchronistic event that has happened in my life occurred around when I was 15 years old. I was pretty certain that I always wanted to be a nurse because my mom is a mental health nurse and she is amazing at what she does and she loves her job. Well, when I was 15, there was this nursing camp at Miami Valley Hospital, and my mom told me, I think this would be a great experience for you to see nursing and see if this is what you want to do for the rest of your life. So I agreed, and being excited for this camp, I went on Monday, and I remember the first half of the day not being super excited about what I was doing, having some second thoughts about it, but I put that to the side and said, maybe you just need to work on a different floor, work with a different patient population, and go from there. Well, the rest of the week went on, and I remember observing different floors, even observing pediatrics, which is my favorite, and still not really falling in love with it. I remember being on the phone with my mom and kind of not wanting to tell her because she was a nurse, and telling her that I really didn't like it that much, and she told me, she said, we don't have to pursue the same career, I want you to do what you love, and why don't you look into other healthcare opportunities? Well, I kind of put that to the side and went the rest of the week while still observing the nurse I was with, and synchronistically enough, on the last day, the patient that we were working with, she said that she didn't really want an observer in the room with her. So the nurse I was with took me down the hall and put me with a physical therapist for the day. And I just remember being in the gym with her and absolutely loving every second and everything that this career entailed. It combined the teaching aspect that I'm always interested in, and she had built such a strong foundation of a relationship with her patient. I left that day being super excited, and I even remember running out to my dad's van, jumping in the front seat and being like, Dad, I found what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I said I'm pretty confident about this decision. I know I need to research more and look more into it and shadow my cousin who's a physical therapist just to make certain that this is what I want to do. But I said, I found it, Dad, I found it. And so, if this synchronistic event wouldn't have happened within my life, I might not be here with all of you in PT school with the best class of classmates I could ask for. So this book really made me think about all those synchronistic events and how they play such a huge part in my life. Alright guys, so I really hope you enjoyed my summary of There Are No Accidents, Synchronicity in the Stories of Our Lives by Robert H. Hauck. I hope that from this book you realize that no matter the circumstance, no matter the individuals involved within the circumstance, the setting, whether it's major or minor, that there really are no accidents within our lives. I've gained an insight that I have applied to my life, and that not everything that happens in my life has to have a concrete reason. I have come to appreciate a few little things that have happened in my life since I've read the book, and I've really thought back on them harder and realized that, this happened for a reason, and that I need to think about it a little more and just not dismiss it as something that was just a coincidence. I encourage all of you, the next time that something meaningful happens in your life, such as a phone call, meeting someone, a dream, something that just can't be explained by a pure chance event, that you really think about it and realize the effect that it can have on your future and within yourself. So thank you all again for listening to my summary, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.